Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. First of all, if my voice sounds a little bit off, please forgive me. I've been sick the last few days and I'm still not 100% over it. But anyway, let's get right into it. We're talking about episode 5 of season 1 of Arrow called Damaged. And once again, the writing on this show, just how tight it is and how really well thought out what's going on is really is impressing me. The whole idea that Oliver has this as part of his plan, getting arrested and charged with murder as part of his plan, and then him basically pointing out what I'm sure most of us had already thought, that it's incredibly suspicious that he comes back after 5 years on this island, and as soon as he does, there's a vigilante running around the city going after people, and to use the kind of resources that he would have to do that, well, sooner or later somebody's going to point to Oliver as the most likely suspect. And that's really something that's absolutely completely and utterly worthy of Batman, and I love it. I love when shows anticipate logical questions and issues that fans will have with what's going on and address them, and really in ways that in ways that really surprise me. This is sort of like how people always say, well, how stupid are the people that are around Clark Kent to not realize he's just Superman wearing glasses. Over the years they've sort of said in the comics, well, he's changes his posture, he slouches, blah 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 blah. At the end of the day, that doesn't really hold water very well. But this actually really does work. And again, my hat is off to the writing team for really being smart with the writing on this show. Speaking of smart, thank God, finally someone kind of brings up the whole conflict of interest of what's going on between the Queen family and the Lance family. It's really actually quite amazing that Moira hasn't threatened to sue the department or sue Quinlan personally or file a complaint against him with the Starling City PD, because really there is no way that some of the stuff he's done to their family could not be counted as harassment, or at least extremely questionable behavior on the part of a police officer. I mean, seriously, I've said on before in these reviews that in the real world, Quinlan, given his personal connection to this family, would never be able to do the stuff he's done on this show. I mean, that's just a fact of law. But that's not really good for the drama of the show. So it's one of those things we just sort of have to run with. Kind of like Clark Kent being able to fool millions and millions of people with glasses. Hey, nothing's perfect, right? I mean, come on, how many movies would be completely impossible if it was not possible for the heroes to drive across L.A. in 20 minutes? Folks, I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I have been to Los Angeles a couple of times. That's just not happening. Okay, LA is a great town, but it's not a city you're going to get to from one side to the other in less time than it takes Domino's to deliver a pizza. Anyway, let's move on. And as long as we're bringing up the Lance family, I guess we might as well start talking about Laurel. Now, I gotta admit, I'm a little frustrated with the writing that we've gotten from Laurel the last couple episodes. Maybe it's just the differences that come from the way a pilot is written and the way things happen in a full-fledged series. Pilots are usually written before the series is given a full-on green light, and of course writers and actors and producers all have input, changes are made, blah 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 blah. So sometimes characters can be slightly different in the pilot episode than they are once the ball really gets rolling. And I think that's a little bit of what we're looking at here with Laurel. I mean, the first episode, she's really in Oliver's face that she blames him for the death of her sister. And of course, Quinlan still has that mat on with him. But lately, it's just Laurel can't really seem to figure out where she is with Oliver. in what was it, episode 3, I believe it was, when he happens to run into her at the courthouse. She is ice cold to him, and here she's kissing the guy. Now, granted, this sort of back and forth, it's very dramatic, it's very interesting, it's certainly kind of in keeping with the tradition of the Oliver Diana, as and I'm talking about in the comics here, their relationship there. The road to romance has never ever been easy for Green Arrow and Black Canary. But that said, it just seems like that she's really dropped the whole blaming him for this death of his sister or being angry at him remarkably quickly. I mean, I was even grousing, I guess it was last week, that she didn't really seem terribly grateful that Oliver's presence helped save her life from China White and her assassins. I could keep going on about this, but I think we should just move on. And just with me just saying, I think Laurel's character is being written somewhat inconsistently. And I think that covers it. Now, the polygraph thing. That's another thing that I did like that they brought up. And Laurel is 100% correct in saying that polygraph tests are inadmissible in court. I mean, whenever I watch a movie or a TV show or something where the cop gets in some suspect's face over a polygraph, or like, we're going to make you take a polygraph, or, your polygraph says you're lying, well, I just got to laugh because, like Laurel says, that's inadmissible in court. A polygraph doesn't prove anything. It just, and it's been scientifically proven that somebody who has a very disciplined mind and all this other stuff, well, basically, the long and the short of it is there are ways around a polygraph test, and Oliver obviously passes a lie detector test while lying. Now, granted, this is later used for some interesting fodder between him and Laurel. Although I gotta really wonder, who in the name of God takes a group of 8th graders to tour a prison unless they're part of a Scared Straight program? I mean, jeez. I mean, I remember once when I was young, we took a tour of a police station, but they said, well, we can't show you that area back there because we actually have people locked up there. Like, you know what? I think this is just one of those things that we probably really shouldn't think about too much. But again, who takes a bunch of perfectly normal junior high school kids to a freaking prison? Man, what are the schools like in this city? Jeez. Okay, I'm obviously harping on something that's ultimately trivial, so let's move on. Talk about. Excuse me a moment. Well, continuing to talk about Laurel, I do like that they're once again bringing her into conflict with her father. It's good, it's dramatic, and I gotta say, Paul Blackthorne is just absolutely rocking on this show. Now, I really have no complaints to make about any of the actors on this show. Steve Amell is really he's really settling into the role. He's had his little stumbling blocks here and there, but again, I think he's really finding Oliver as these episodes go along. And if you ever check out the guy's Twitter account, he actually seems like a pretty cool dude, and he is totally jazzed about his role on this show. I mean, his enthusiasm, if you check his Twitter feed, is just absolutely infectious. I love the dude. But as I was saying, Paul Blackthorne just absolutely knocking Quinlan Lance out of the park. This is a guy who, in the hands of lesser writers and actors, really could have just been a very one-dimensional, unlikable character. But here, we do continue to see him as a multifaceted character. He is a guy who firmly believes in the law, and yet he's willing to really push things, to really not give Oliver, well, innocent until proven guilty, and someone who is not above carrying out a personal vendetta against the family of a guy he doesn't like. Now, granted, he has pretty good reasons not to like Oliver. He blames Oliver for the death of his sister. He blames that for setting off the events that made his wife leave him. And of course, here we see that Oliver, for better or for worse, really does have some kind of a hold over Laurel that really puts them in conflict. And keep in mind, the this is just coming after the vigilante, kind of causing a rift between them. So, it's really understandable why Quinlan is emotionally in a really, really tough place. But at the end of the day, he and Laurel reconcile. At the end of the day, he sort of acknowledges that Oliver, as much as he might hate him, is not an evil person. He is a person who is genuinely remorseful about what happened to his daughter. And, again, he has to admit that he accused Oliver of, well, granted, something Oliver is indeed guilty of, but as far as he knows, he accused an innocent man. And as a police officer who firmly believes in the law, who really holds the law as the thing that is getting him through life with all the pain and turmoil that he's going through. The law and Laurel are all he really has. That little nod to Oliver at the end it's a real acknowledgement. Now, I'm sure we'll be seeing these two butting heads again in the future, but I do like this. It certainly does bode well for a continued interesting dynamic between the characters of Oliver and Quinlan. Quentin. Cripes, I can't even remember what the guy's Detective Lance. I think I'm getting him mixed up with an X-Men character. I have read far too many comic books, dear God. Okay, well, speaking of comic books, let's talk about the little nods to the comics this time around. Of course, we get Laurel making a mention of wearing fishnets, and Black Canary is really well known, apart from Zatanna, as a super. Black Canary and Zatanna are the two best well-known superheroines who have continuously over the years worn fishnets as part of their costume. Now, Zatanna's costume is really just her stage magician outfit, so it makes a lot more sense. Again, the fishnets are kind of an iconic part of Black Canary's costume, although she has had outfits over the years that do not include them. But for all the fans who hate them, I think there are two or three more. For every one fan that hates the fishnets, I think there are like two or three that love them. I personally, I actually kind of do not really have a solid opinion one way or about it one way or the other. I guess I lean slightly towards the more practical outfits that Black Canary has worn over the years, but I can't deny that the fishnet costumes and their various variations, they look seriously cool. So it's just a question of rule of cool versus rule of practicality. And you know what? As long as it's drawn by a good artist, I really don't have a problem with it either way. Um, of course, this introduces us this episode to Deathstroke, him wearing his iconic mask, which you'll notice he has two eyes. The Deathstroke of the comics, of course, is well known for having lost an eye at some point during his various adventures. I actually remember reading the issue where that happened, or at least where it had a flashback to it, but that's really not relevant to what's going on here. What is relevant is, of course, at the first episode, we briefly see a mask, Deathstroke's mask, stuck up on a pole with an arrow going through one eye. So, you know, again, I'm not spoiled on this show, and I certainly don't want to be. Please, please, please do not post spoilers in the comments on this channel. Uh, I I will, of course, remove them if you do, and if this continues to become a problem, and I seriously do not want to do this. But if somebody is out there and doing this continuously, then I'm afraid I will block you from this channel. Okay? I am going to be very firm about this. This is not a place for spoilers, guys. But I do think that we will be seeing more of that. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get to see Deathstroke say anything. But, I'm sure that probably won't last. And as I'm sure they've got a fine actor for him. He's not somebody I'm terribly familiar with. But I gotta say, to me, I don't think anybody is going to be able to top the voice that Ron Perlman gave Deathstroke, aka the character when he was called Slade, over on Teen Titans. His performance there was just out of the park. And Ron Perlman is a very good actor, live action, voice work, phenomenal dude. Really, really great performance there. One of the best incarnations of Deathstroke in the comics, out of the comics, anywhere. Now let me see here. Oh yes, I almost forgot. The character of Eddie Friars, or however the heck he says that. Okay, creepy British dude. This is another guy who is a character from the comics. He's not somebody I'm terribly familiar with. I vaguely remember reading a Green Arrow story with him years and years ago, probably like sometime in the late 90s. What's interesting is that in the comics, I believe the character is American, and he's actually an ally of Green Arrow. Now, we don't really know that he couldn't become Oliver's ally at some point in the future, or this could just be a straight up, take a character who's good and turn them evil in a different incarnation of the story. Kind of like what happened with like the Sci-Fi Channel version of Riverworld. Excuse me. Yeah, I might have to make this a little bit shorter than my usual videos for this show because a lot of my throat really took a beating while I was sick. I mean, Monday, people who heard me talk just literally laughed at me. My voice was so messed up. So anyway, he could become an ally during the future. I don't know. That's just something I think we should all keep in mind. One thing that this bothered me in the pilot episode, and it bothered me when we saw it here again, is that it's referenced that the Queen's Gambit went down in the North China Sea. Folks, there is no body of water that is called the China Sea. There is no body of water that is called the North China Sea. There is the East China Sea, there is the South China Sea, and if you're talking about bodies of water called sea that are touching China, there is also the Yellow Sea. There is no freaking place called the North China Sea. And if you're wondering why I have such a burr up my butt over this, it's because one of my majors in college, and I had two of them, one was Japanese and geography. So again, like I said, one of my majors in college was geography, and stuff like this, it just drives me crazy. It absolutely drives me crazy because this is something that anybody who just bothered to look at a map or a globe could see is wrong. And if they were just going to say the northern part of the various China seas, they could have the proper thing to say would have been Northern China Sea, even though there is no such body of water as the China Sea. So either there is some extremely poor geography going on, or there's some extremely poor grammar going on. Yeah. What can I say, folks? Sometimes the side effects of my education get to me a little bit more than they probably should. I'm sure cops and lawyers and doctors feel exactly the same way whenever they see their profession inaccurately represented in entertainment. And I'm sure that's also true for scientists and accountants or whatever. But well, you folks get what I'm driving at, I'm sure. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm going to have to wrap this up pretty soon. So let's hit the other highlights. Really nice scene with Thea this episode. Some hints that maybe she's not taking everything Oliver tells her as gospel. So, could be interesting. And I have to note that when this all started, that scene with her, he again referred to her as Speedy. So, so that's something to keep an eye on. Great stuff going on between Walter and Moira this episode. Again, I really have to praise what they're doing with the character of Walter. I really did not think he would be a very interesting character when we first started out on this show. now I'm really liking Walter. I'm rooting for him. He's turned out to be a really good, upstanding guy. And the parallels between Moira and Oliver with the lies and the choices they're having to make, hurting and causing pain to the people that they love. I mean, that's really well done. And it does sort of show us that whatever path you're taking, if part of your life is to continually lie to the people around you, to the people that you love, that even if you think you're doing it for a good reason, at the end of the day, it's ultimately just going to hurt them. And I gotta say, also delivering a very great performance, as always, is John Barrowman. We still don't even know what his character is called, but I'm really loving it. I just love the way he just sort of, treats sending a guy to murder Moira's son like he spilled a glass of wine on her white carpet. And yeah, I'm totally looking forward to seeing more of his character. Just today, there was some news announced regarding another DC villain. Yet another one. I talked about one who was announced last week. Although there's another one who's been announced to be coming on the show later on. I won't tell you who it is, but it's a character who I've always had an odd fondness for, and even I couldn't tell you why. But it's somebody I'm pretty jazzed about. I don't think the character has been cast yet, but that's cool. One thing I will say, though, that I heard is Ben Browder is going to be coming on the show. Yeah, Ben Browder. Yeah, Stargate, Farscape. He was on Doctor Who, playing a cowboy character, sheriff of an old west town, a couple of months, several weeks ago, and he even voiced the character of Batlash from the DC Comics on an episode of the Justice League cartoon. I don't think he's going to be reprising that character, given as Batlash is an Old West character. But come on, guys, it's Ben Browder, and he freaking rocks. I gotta say, again, the people they are getting on the show just absolutely blow me away. I mean, we're getting guys from stuff like Dresden Files, from, of course, Doctor Who and Torchwood, and now other stuff like Stargate and Farscape, and I'm just loving it. This is just such a great show for us geeky folks. And, folks, this is really everything I think we could ever possibly want from a live action superhero TV show. I mean, this puts Lois and Clark with, Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher to shame. I mean, for God's sakes, that show had Superman fight cousin Balky from Perfect Strangers as the prankster. No, seriously, that episode happened. And while Lois and Clark was an enjoyable show for what it was, it ain't Arrow. Anyway, folks, my voice is, yeah, still not 100%, so I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. And until next time, take care and have a good one.